I just was I was so grateful that I had made it out, because I didn't think I was going to. And I just had hope. And I remember I was facing 2 to 99 years. The DA would not give me probation. And so I had to go open plea before the judge and just, that he would give me drug treatment. And I didn't care. I knew that wherever I ended up is where I needed to go to be able to be okay. And God was in charge, and I was good with that.
And welcome to the Darren Woodson Show. This is part 2 of a 2-part series. We previously talked to Matt Osborne with New Friends, New Life, Operation Underground Railroad. And we talked and we introduced the topic of sex trafficking in our culture, and it being the fastest growing criminal industry on the globe. Today, this is part 2. We are going to have a very candid conversation with a survivor that went through horrific acts, a terrible journey, and with the help of others, but had the strength to overcome it, and to now be flourishing in life. And then not only flourishing, but now to be making an impact herself and helping other victims, and realize that you are more than this. You are more important. God meant for more for you out of life. And so we're really, really excited to have our guest on today. And this guest, Darren and I, actually, so I met Robbie a little over 2 years ago, maybe I guess a week before Darren did, but Robbie spoke at a breakfast for the men's advocacy group, which is under New Friends, New Life, that we talked about in the last episode, on a panel. And it was a really cool panel because we had, myself, a former professional athlete, and then we had a law enforcement, and then we had a business leader, a very, very prominent business leader. And then we had a survivor as well. So it was a very diverse group, but what it did, it was a perfect picture to say, look, this affects everybody. Everybody. Yeah. And so our guest, Robbie Hamilton, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
He absolutely crushed it that day, and we brought it up.
You know why? Because the energy that Robbie brings to the table, and what you, our listeners, will hear today, the energy and the pure transparency comes through, and you really get a good understanding of her experience. So, Robbie, we want to start. We want to go back in your life, and in this show, we talk about the journey, and we want to go back into your life. Where did you grow up? Was it did you have both parents in your life? Was faith in your life? Tell us how you grew up.
Yep.
So I grew up in a really good part of town. I grew up in Dallas. My mom and dad are still married. They've been together since they were in junior high. I have 3 sisters. I was a cheerleader. I had horses. I had a very privileged upbringing. There was no abuse in the home, nothing like that. And so yet, from a very young age, I was rebellious. I kind of still am. And don't tell me what to do. And so I
just call that badass. I just think you're just a badass.
Yeah, don't tell me what to do, even if it's good for me. And I started rebelling. I started smoking cigarettes when I was really young. I started smoking pot when I was like 13. We were drinking. It was the 70s. It was the 70s. It was, the whole love the one you're with type thing. And so what I didn't know was how vulnerable that made me. And so, I started going to clubs at a really young age. I was 15 with a fake ID that said I was 5'7". I'm barely 5 foot, with black hair or something. And, the guys didn't pay any attention, just let me in the clubs. And so one of the clubs that I went to down off of Northwest Highway, European Crossroads, was right next to a strip club. And one night, me and a girlfriend of mine, and I'll just, we were 15, incredibly vulnerable, although we thought we knew everything. And it was kind of this, like, you go in, no, you go in. I mean, we were intoxicated, and we walked in there. And what we didn't know, this is one of the things that I tell the girls that I mentor, you don't understand the portal you just opened into a world that you are simply not prepared for. And so we walked in, and the guy behind the bar was like, oh my God. I mean, I don't look my age now, really. I'm 74. I'm kidding.
You and Darren are the same age. That's crazy.
It's amazing.
Welcome.
So, I mean, and at 15, I probably looked 12, and so anyway, the guy knew we were underage, but instead of, no, you can't come in here. It was like, oh my gosh, y'all are amazing. Please come in. And he treated us like we were long lost family. Served us drinks, told us that, we were special and that we would be his best girls. And, the next thing, within an hour, we were dancing in a all nude bar.
You were that same day?
That same night.
Wow. So you went out to a club, you went right next door to a strip joint, and with the intention of just seeing it, and you were dancing that night.
Yep.
Unbelievable.
There was something about, it's funny. I think I got maybe a little lost in my upbringing. I have 3 sisters. There's only 7 years age difference between all 4. I mean, between the oldest and the youngest, we're just boom, 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 boom. And I was an attention seeker, and I think I got lost in the shuffle. And so, well, if I can't get attention there, I'll go get it over here. And I don't understand my size. I'm 6'5", bulletproof, and and I think I just felt like I knew what I was doing. I was going to be okay.
So what were the conversations like with your parents, knowing you were rebellious? I'm sure that was right in their face every day. What was those conversations like then? And did you listen at all?
No. No. It's funny. I'm still apologizing. Okay. No, I'm kidding. My dad, who I adore, he's my hero. He's the best man I've ever known. But back then, we butted heads really badly because he was going to make me behave. And the more that, I didn't grow up in the church. The only experience I ever had with Jesus was from the movie Jesus Christ Superstar.
Yeah.
And it was because I had a crush on the guy that played Jesus. I didn't get it. I didn't get any of it. And so I didn't, I always believed that there was something. I just didn't know what it was. And so I didn't have any spiritual direction, if you will, that kind of, I knew right from wrong, obviously, but I didn't have a lot of accountability, I guess, because you weren't going to tell me what to do. And I was very, very rebellious, very rebellious.
So you're in this strip club and you end up dancing. What happens from there? How do things, what direction?
We went back. We went back. And, it's funny too, because one of the things that is so important for people to understand is that, they'll see a girl that's on a corner and they'll think, well, why didn't she just leave? Why didn't she just get a job? And they don't understand the pathway to that, because not only have you now been exploited, there's a guilt and a shame that is attached to that, again, in the portal, when you walked in, you weren't expecting that. So even though I knew that, hey, they were, it was fun, the next day when I woke up, I felt ashamed. But because I was vulnerable and, easily enticed, I guess you could say, we went back, because there was also a part that was the attention.
Yeah. Right. And no one walked you in the first day.
No. And that is something, y'all, I'm telling you, I had to go through 10 years of counseling before I would say that I had been trafficked. I wouldn't say it because I didn't believe it, because I walked in the door.
Yeah.
But the difference is that I was a minor.
Right.
And sexual exploitation, exploitation means you've been, and so when you're vulnerable, when you're underage, when you've got people telling you they're good at what they do, they groom you, they don't grab you and throw you in there. They make you feel like, you belong there.
Right.
And so coupled with all of that, along with the fact that I was rebellious from a young age, and I was attracted to the dark side. I was. And so all of that, it was like a perfect disaster, perfect storm or something. And so, yeah. And again, because it was the 70s, my parents, they didn't know what to do with me. And a lot of times they just, sometimes it's like, well, we'll just hope it works out for the best.
Right.
And so there was a little bit of a, the elephant in the room type thing.
Mm-hmm. Well, we talked the last episode, Tyler was talking about how, and not a good way, obviously, but how smart these people are.
Yes.
And so what you're talking about, yeah, in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, they grab you, they throw you in a van, they take you off. But they actually do the exact opposite.
They do the exact opposite.
They get you to want to come back by treating you a certain way.
It's like a lot of people, again, they think that being trafficked, whether it's, for whether you're being prostituted or whether you're being exploited in a strip club, they think that we are approached and it's like the movie Taken, like we're forced. And it's like, oh, no. We think these people are our friends. We would stick up for them. There's so many girls that I mentor that they still want to go back to their trafficker because in their mind, their trafficker is their boyfriend. That's not her trafficker. That's my boyfriend. That's my boo.
Yeah.
And so it's like he's making money by selling you as a human being.
Yeah.
And it's that's the problem with all of this is that we take on the shame and the guilt. Mm-hmm. We wear it.
So how did it escalate from there? From, you go back and how did it escalate?
I was born, my drug addiction is what was my downfall. Mm-hmm. Because from a very early age, I drank alcoholically. I didn't know what one was. Mm-hmm. And I always overdid everything I did. And so I dropped out of high school when I was 17. I was already shooting dope. I was on a path already that I didn't know how to get off of. At a very young age, I had a couple of things happen. My best friend from childhood was killed in a car accident. And my boyfriend was shot in front of me. And so
at what age? At what age did that happen?
I was 22 when that happened. A girl came into our apartment and shot him, and he did live, but attempted. It was very traumatic. And so in all of that, again, I'm way over my head. I'm not emotionally prepared to deal with her death, his shooting, my drug addiction, working in strip clubs, all of it. And so I just kept pouring more drugs and alcohol on it.
Okay. How did you get introduced to, alcohol? You said that you were already drinking when you went into strip. How did you get introduced and who put those in front of you for the first time?
The first time I ever smoked pot, it was with a friend, another cheerleader. Hey, look what I've got, and it was like, oh, wow, that's the coolest thing ever. And, I remember when I lived in the sober living house, and a friend there, I asked him, because he was my age, grew up in the 70s, the whole bit. And I said, so did you do drugs and alcohol? And he said, no. And I said, really? I said, how did you get out of the 70s without drinking and drugging? And he said, I never had any reason to change my reality.
Wow.
I know. I just was like, oh my, because there you go.
Yeah.
So I think I was just trying to, change my reality a little bit, not knowing that I had the genetic predisposition to become addicted.
Oh my gosh.
Because you do or you don't.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And then how you deal with it. But okay, so you spend years and years in the strip club. And how did that, I know it took you a lot of counseling to think, okay, I was actually trafficked. That was a real deal. But in that time, what is going through your mind on, did you ever say, hey, I don't want to do this?
So my mom and dad, my family was always coming to me with, like, okay, plan number 47 of how to help Robbie get it together. And, they would, pay my rent. My mom and dad, they threw money at my problems because they didn't know what else to do, And so, and I would, get out of the strip clubs for a while, and I would go get a job managing apartments as a leasing agent, get a free apartment. That was kind of my thing. I got fired. In fact, when I had to write down all of the places I'd ever been employed when I was getting my pardon. And it was 64 places.
Oh my!
And I was like, well, apparently I interviewed really well, but until my sobriety, and I've been sober 17 years, until now, I had been fired from, I was fired from a topless club, and that does, for doing drugs. And so, which does not look good on a resume, by the way. So I didn't have any direction. I remember I kept waiting for somebody to save me.
Yeah. Well, I'm listening to your story, and it's like, your mother and father were, listen, I have my daughter went through a drug addiction problem.
Did she really?
She went through one, and it was sort of the same catalyst of, I couldn't fix her. I couldn't fix her. And I was throwing money at her to I could sit down with her. She looked right through me. I mean, Robbie, right through me. And I would throw money at her, try to get this done, get that done with her. And it just didn't happen that way. And it took, she'll tell you in a minute, it took her to be saved. I mean, she had to go through the process that she went through. She had to go through that. But
it's funny. I tell people it's like you're throwing money at a problem that money can't fix.
Mm-hmm.
And even with people that I sponsor through the 12 steps, when I talk to them about addiction, even we don't know what the heck's wrong with us. We just think it's a moral problem.
Right.
And it's real simple. The reason we can't hear you is because we're addicted.
Right.
And you're in our way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so as long as you will worry more about our problems than we are, because we don't care if our rent gets paid, we just want more dope.
Right.
And so as long as you'll care about our problems more than we do and fix them, we'll let you.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's that simple. It is that simple.
Wow.
Okay. So let's move forward on this. Because you started, your first go around was going into a strip joint at 15 years old. You had alcohol. And how long were you going through this experience of drugs, strip joint? I mean, this go from
that really lasted because I moved to Houston. That's where my boyfriend got shot. I moved to Houston in the early 80s, and I was dancing in strip clubs there. Moving back to Dallas, so all of the 80s are just a blur. At the end of the 80s, I remember I was getting tired because suddenly now I'm almost 30. And, when you're young and you're a kid, it's like, I'm just experimenting with life. But, suddenly you start getting to be 30 and your friends are getting married and they have a mortgage and you're over here dancing in strip clubs. And it started bothering me. And so I tried to get it together. And for a couple of years, I was able to get it together. And I managed apartments. But, it's funny because to me at that time I had it together, but I smoked pot every day.
Mm-hmm.
I was still an addict. But I just was a functioning addict, if you will. And in about 93, I guess, the bottom fell out again. I started doing drugs again, heavy drugs. Methamphetamine was the one that I did. And I started working in strip clubs again. And I then worked in strip clubs until I got sober.
Okay. Talk about that catalyst of getting sober. What was that bottom for you? And
just one thing I did do on drugs, but one thing I did do is I went through cosmetology school in the late 90s, and I got to finish it. Okay, so in 1999, my dad came to me and said, "I'm going to pay your rent again, and this is the last dime I'll ever give you." And my little sister, who's another one of my heroes, had finally convinced my parents that they were killing me by throwing money at me, and that they had to let me fall. And so they did. And I was evicted the next month out of my apartment. And that was the beginning. I was homeless for 3.5 years.
Homeless for 3.5 years.
For 3.5 years, from 1999 until 2003. It started out, where I'd go stay with this person who was a good friend of mine. And, but my drug addiction was so bad that I had become kind of that girl that was like, God, get her out of here.
Yeah.
And I was still working in strip clubs, but barely, because my addiction had gotten really bad, so that I physically had started looking really bad. And I was 40 working in a strip club. Right. I'll never forget. I was at PT's by White Rock Lake, and a guy came up to me as I was on stage, and he said, "Hey, me and my buddy, we have a bet going." And I go, "Yeah." And he goes, "How old are you?"
Wow.
And I was like, "Yeah." And it was just, I mean, I didn't know how to get out. I really didn't. So I was staying in an apartment in Garland, and that experience I could write a book on just by itself. And I was hanging out with people. I didn't hang out with anybody unless they had a really bad drug addiction too, because we were going to do drugs all the time. Yeah. And I hung out with several men who were dope cooks. They were methamphetamine cooks. So I lived in meth labs, in trailers, and in Farmersville. And so I was living in one apartment in Garland, and the Garland Task Force kicked our door in with a no-knock search warrant on January 14th of 2003.
Wow.
And they rescued me. They arrested me. I had been arrested 4 or 5 times over the previous few years, charged with drug possession. And when they kicked my door in this time, I was arrested for drug possession and with the intent to deliver. And then I also had felony warrants out for my arrest from other cases that I had been running from. So I was just in this, and so when I got to court and was arraigned within a couple of days, the judge said the words that saved me, and they were, "You have a no bond. You're not getting out."
Wow.
Have a seat.
You needed to hit rock bottom. You needed to go there.
And it's funny because I remember, in fact, this is going to be the first sentence of my book. I'm kidding. But I remember laying on the ground with the M16 and the boot on my back holding me down. And I was just crushed. Sobering up in jail from drug addiction is excruciating.
And years of it, not just.
And I had done it so many times. And I remember I looked at the guy that was the dope cook, and I just said, I can't do this anymore. I can't do this anymore. And so when they took me to jail and the judge said no bond, I just let go. I just let go.
But even that, I mean, you had to dry out.
Yeah.
You had to dry out.
It took me, I had probably been close, I'm not kidding, and I even wrote it down. I had probably been close to 10 years sober before I could differentiate between 2000, 2001, and 2002. Wow. I did not know where I had been. It was just motels and people. And so when I got to jail and they did the no bond, I remember going back to my cell, and I didn't call my parents. I just started praying to this thing that was bigger than me, that people called God. And I remember I would say, this was my repeated prayer. I would say, "God, please, if I ever try to get to the dope house again, just make me so sick that I can't get there." That was what I kept saying. And within just a few days, just something was different. There's a part in the Bible that says all old things pass away and all things become new. And y'all, there is such a thing worse than death, and it's living without hope. And I had not had any hope. I remember looking in the mirror one time, and you know how usually when you look in the mirror, you're looking at your appearance, your clothes, your hair, or whatever. And I remember I'd been shooting dope all weekend in this motel with a guy. And I remember looking in the mirror for a second, and I saw me.
Yeah.
And I was gray. I had blood shots all over my chest I was 30 pounds thinner than I am now. And I remember thinking, oh my gosh, you had such potential. And I thought, you're going to die like this. And I was so addicted that I thought, well, then I just guess I hope it doesn't take long.
Right.
So, that's what I'm sitting here thinking. When you've never been addicted to drugs, from an outsider looking in, you just don't understand why they can't just stop. You don't understand why if no bond hits you, and that's what was why couldn't have that happened earlier?
Right.
Why couldn't have your parents, something they said, been something that changed you? So I'm just sitting here thinking, what was your relationship with goals and aspirations and dreams? Like, what did you want to do?
I didn't have
with
any
your
idea.
life?
I had no idea. That's one thing that I look back and I really do. I think, why? The only thing I cared about was the club on Friday night, who had dope, and what we were going to do next.
Well, Robbie, one of the things I wanted to talk to you about, because there's some similarities here. Again, my daughter went through it for about 1.5 years. And not to the extreme that you went through it in your life, but
so she's okay now.
She is. She's been sober for 3.5, 4 years, about 4 years. She'll tell you the date, everything.
Yeah.
But, again,
I have my date. I have tattoos now. I've gotten them all in my recovery. I'm covered in Jesus and recovery tattoos now. But I have my sobriety date. Like I tell people, I can't relapse. I have my sobriety date tattooed on my back.
Yeah. One of the things, the experiences as a father that I went through, because I love my daughter. She's always, I can only imagine my daughter all the time as she was the baby. She was, at 3 years old, I'm looking at her, and I always look at her through those eyes. But, and to Ben's question about, it's a disease.
Yes.
And you think that you can get over the hump by just having conversations and, why don't you just do this? And why don't you do that? And it doesn't work that way. And I've been, highly successful in a lot of areas. I sucked at that. And
it's so confusing because, I tell people the way we bleed, and I mean addicts when I say the way we bleed is in our behavior.
Yes.
The way a cancer patient that's also a disease. The way a cancer patient bleeds is through their body. The way we bleed,
there you go,
is we lie, we cheat, we steal, we manipulate, we wreak havoc on anyone that has anything to do with us. And so, because y'all who are not addicted look at our behavior of addicts and you just think, why can't she just stop? Why can't she I tell people, addiction happens when your brain and all the neurotransmitters takes over your mind, will, and emotions. When your neurotransmitters are addicted to the drug, that is what suddenly drives everything you do. We're like lab rats, and it really is that simple. I had a sponsee call me last night, and she had relapsed. And she told me that she really thought the reason that she had relapsed was because she had been so lonely.
Yeah.
And I said, baby, you relapsed because you're an unrecovered addict. We use, if we're happy, lonely, sad, get a job, lose a job, we don't need a reason. So, and as long as you think that the reason you relapse is because you were lonely, you'll get to think, well, if I'm not lonely, I won't use anymore. And that's not the case.
Right. Yeah.
Just
Yeah, the disease of addiction is something that I'm very passionate about because so many people don't understand.
They don't, and it's the arrogance that comes along with it. Like in my situation, it was the arrogance to think that I could drive my own daughter out, that I could do. I don't mind sending her to a rehab center, and it was the arrogance, the ignorance. It was the fact that the embarrassment I didn't want to go through on my own, and I felt like I could save her. I could be the one.
And I get that. You know, I get that. You know, my poor mom and dad, I have freaked them out my entire life, you know, because now what I do in a sense is a little bit like, oh, there's Robbie on in the news again, or, you know, talking about being a stripper. And so it's a little bit of that embarrassment, I think, because I think that parents believe that, you know, they're responsible some way for how we turned out, you know?
Right.
Yeah. I mean, I'm already thinking that way. And my sons are 3 and 5 months old, and it's, how am I going to make them do something, or how am I going to push them in a direction?
You know what? This is the thing I tell parents, because I get to do a lot of speaking to parents, and this is what I always say: have a conversation, and I don't mean one, a constant conversation, because you know this is the conversation I got when I would get in trouble. You're grounded. Go to your room.
Yeah,
that was it.
Right.
And I had no voice. And so, and I'm not blaming. I'm just saying it was this.
No, not at all.
I get it. But, you know, even my sister Kay was saying, and not only have a conversation with your kids about drugs, don't tell them that it's bad, that drugs are bad, because if they do them and they like it, they're going to think you're a liar. So be honest.
Or there's something wrong with them because they like it.
Exactly. Yeah, be honest. Like, hey, they start out, it feels okay. It feels, you think you're having fun, but what you don't understand, and again, that portal, you don't understand.
Yeah.
You know, some people that are like, their favorite thing is alcohol or meth or cocaine or whatever. They think that if they're not doing that, but they are drinking still, that it's okay. And it's like, no, you have to be completely sober.
Yeah.
And so, because you don't, the problem with the disease of addiction is that you don't know you're going to get it until after you have it.
Right.
And after you have it, you're screwed. You know?
Well.
All right. So you're in jail now, and you've hit rock bottom. And you go through the dry out process. And at the end here, when we finish up with the conversation, I want to have a brief conversation with you. Just, you know, talking, because there's a lot you're saying right now, Robbie, that I've been there. And this brings back so much pain. I still got, you know, I'm emotional about it. But, you know, you're in prison right now at that point in your life. How many years are you serving?
I didn't get sentenced to prison. I was only in the Dallas County jail. Thank goodness. Yeah. But I was there for 7 months. And I was on 3 different probations, a 10-year, a 5-year, and a 3-year. And I got sentenced to court-ordered drug treatment in Wilmer, Texas. And so I was transferred from Lou Sterrett straight to the drug treatment. And it was court-ordered also. So like if you left, you would have an escape charge, but there was no cells. You know, we lived in cottages, but by this time I was on fire for Jesus. You know, I was baptized in Dallas County Jail.
No way.
I was baptized 28 days after I had been thrown to the ground and arrested. I was so on fire for Jesus. Just I was sanctified. I mean, it came to me so, I just had such a, it's almost like I felt like it was me and Jesus and my Bible in my cell. I remember, okay, y'all, so I have a very colorful language.
Hey, there's zero filter on this. The great thing is we're not on public radio. So
we have nothing binding us. You say what you want to say.
Yeah, well, I'm kind of known for it, you know? Yeah. And so I came to jail and had my colorful language with me, and I was raw. I mean, I'd been in the clubs, I was drug deal, all of that. And so I remember my cellie, my bunkie, she had been having a problem with a girl there in our tank. And she was telling me about it. And so I go, well, why is she being such a, and I kind of leaned forward and I said, such a bee.
Who is this person?
You've never filtered yourself before.
But it was like I felt so, I'm going to cry. I felt so pure.
Yeah.
That I couldn't let it come out of my mouth. And y'all, for probably 4 years, I did not ever. In fact, my childhood friends, when the first time I actually let, the F-bomb slip or something, they were like, oh, thank God she's back. Because they didn't know how to talk to me anymore, but I was so grateful that I had made it out. Because I didn't think I was going to. And I just had hope. And I remember I was facing 2 to 99 years. The DA would not give me probation. And so I had to go open plea before the judge and just, that he would give me drug treatment. And I didn't care. I knew that wherever I ended up is where I needed to go to be able to be okay. And God was in charge, and I was good with that. And so when I got court-ordered drug treatment, I completed it. It was hard. Woo! It was hard. I learned a lot because it was a behavioral modification treatment center. And I learned about my selfishness and my entitlement and my manipulation and all the things, the criminal thinking, just all of that I had to let go of. And I graduated, moved straight into a sober living house because when I got out of drug treatment, my mom and dad's house was still no. My mom and dad to this day have not given me a dime. As they shouldn't. I got to rebuild my life. Right. And so I moved into a sober living house. I lived there for 3 years. And it was when I walked in the door, I saw one of my old cellmates from Lou Sterrett. And I was like, what's up? And she told me about New Friends, New Life. And so I had been out maybe a week when I went to New Friends, New Life for the first time.
Robbie, I want to stop it because I want to go back really quickly. And I was going to ask the question to you, but you answered it. But I want you to go back into that cell before you're in front of the judge and before you're ordered to drug treatment program. And had you not found your faith, had you not found that hope, what do you think? Because I'm just saying there's so many men and women that are in that position. And because we're talking about the trafficking and we're talking about that, let's just speak to the women that are in jail, that are arrested. And then it's like, what do I do? Like, there's nothing else for me to do. And in your case, I'm 40 and I don't know. I dropped out of high school. I've been addicted to drugs for the last 20 years. What am I supposed to do from here? And just the hopelessness that would be there. But like you said, something so powerful came to you in the Dallas County Jail that gave you hope in the most challenging circumstances ahead of you. And yet you were able to have hope, and, prayers were answered, that you didn't have to serve prison time. Can you imagine, put yourself in the shoes of someone else that doesn't find that?
Because I had been arrested and I had 3 other felony charges against me that I had gotten out, and they were like, okay, make sure you come back to court. I'm like, yeah, right. Find my ass in Dallas, So, and they will, they will. But so I was just in so much trouble that, when I did get arrested, I didn't know, what I would do. And so when I was able to let go and find God, it made such a difference. But the times before, when I would get out, I was straight back to the dope house. Right. Because before, I would be locked up like 6 weeks, 7 weeks, something like that. It was always usually about that before I would go to court or something. And I would get out, and within hours, I was right back where I was. And so this last time, it's funny, every January 14th, which is my sobriety day, I take cookies and brownies from Paradise Bakery, because they're so good.
So good they are.
To the Garland police station. And I take them to the police officers there. And I always just say, you know, if you ever doubt that what you do makes a difference, I want you to remember me, because they saved my life. You know, they came in and they took me out of a situation that I didn't know how to get out of. And then the judicial system locked me up so I could get some clarity.
So, Ronnie, talk to us about the, let's just because we talked with Matt, but the women that you're working with now, maybe, you know, yes, 70s and 80s were a little bit different, but now you are working with New Friends, New Life. You're working with the 12-step program, making the impact. And like you just mentioned, the police officers in Garland that saved your life. Now you're doing that to other women that have gone through, you know, sex trafficking, drug addiction, the whole gamut. But talk through that experience and how you can relate to that. Okay, I could not escape it. There was no way out for me. Now talk about some of these girls and what they're going through and how you give them hope.
You know, by standing in front of them. I mean, I know that sounds simplistic, but you know, my pastor, he always says there is nothing more healing to the human spirit than someone looking at you and saying, I know, me too.
Yep.
And so for me to be able to say, I get it, you know, and another thing, and this is where, you know, I used to ask God to help me have a more, less bold, just because I just say it.
Zero filter.
Thank you. Yeah, I've heard of those. I've never had one, but I've heard of those. And so, and yet, you know, he doesn't. And so in certain situations, I've spent half my life apologizing for something I've said. So in certain situations, it is too much. But I can talk to a dope fiend. I can talk to a girl on the streets in a way, because I've been there, that y'all can't, someone else can't, a counselor can't, master degree social worker can't, because we look at y'all and think, you don't know what I'm talking about. Right. Mm-hmm. And so for me to be able to, I can call them on their shit. Yep. And I can also give them hope. And so, you know, I'll say too, my white privilege, I'm telling you, it's one of the reasons I'm sitting here. Mm-hmm. I have learned so much. These girls, they don't know how to get out. They don't know how to get out. And one of the things that New Friends, New Life is able to do is we're able to give them a pathway. You know, I still do want to go into the prisons and talk to people, because, you know, a lot of times when we're rebuilding our lives, people will say, well, you know, just let go and let God, or, you know, one day at a time, or just pray. And I'm like, you don't get it. Mm-hmm. I don't know where to go when I get out. Do I go right? Do I go left? What do I do? Don't tell me to pray, because I need clear-cut directions. You know, there was a girl, and I'd love to find her. There was a girl when I was in Lou Sterrett that I was out in the break room, reset, whatever, it's a cage. And we were talking just for a brief moment, and she was getting ready to go home. And she and I talked about wanting to be better and stay sober, and, you know, what that looked like. And she said, Robbie, just try it their way. You know, your way wasn't working. And so go surround yourself with people whose lives you respect, and then do what they tell you to do. Mm-hmm. And so that's what I say to the girls. I always tell them, do you want what I have? Do you want what I have? Because if you want what I have, you've got to do what I did to get it. Mm-hmm. And you can't do what you did to get what Robbie has. You got to do what I did to get what Robbie, you know. And so I'm very, because I went through the behavioral modification drug treatment, I'm very much about accountability. I'm very much about, you know, hey, that's not, you know, honesty, you know, moving forward, keeping your word, having an idea of what you want to do. And I tell my girls all the time, every time we hang up the phone, I always am telling them how much courage it takes. Mm-hmm. I always say, See that door over there? Only badasses walk through that door, because there's so many people on the streets that don't get to do what we do. So only badasses walk through that door.
Sound like my daughter. You sound like my daughter. She said, "There's no one like us. We are our own kind." Yes.
I mean, seriously. And so when I hang up the phone with my sponsees and my girls, I always say, "Okay, go be a badass."
Well, talk to us about being a sponsee, because I've heard that many a times, but really never knew the power of accountability. Tell us about being a sponsee.
So being a sponsee means that you are, the one coming in and wanting to work the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous or Narcotics Anonymous or Cocaine Anonymous. There's several different 12-step programs where you are a sponsee coming in and you're wanting to rebuild your life and get sober. And so a sponsor is someone that has done the work already, and they come in and they're, I'm very hands-on with my girls. I was a sponsee when I went through it all, and I've worked the steps 3 times. And now I sponsor girls to do the same thing. And, I usually only sponsor one girl at a time. Right now I have 3, but just because of the pandemic, I have more time at home. But I just, we need someone that can say, "What were you thinking?" But in a way that's non-judgmental, and a way that can help them, okay, or, "Hey, what I did was," because we don't really want to hear, this is going to sound bad. We appreciate the social workers, and we appreciate we do, because it's a loving thing, but nobody can tell. And I say dope fiend with a lot of respect. It's not an insult when I call myself that, because it's just, but there's no one that can talk to another dope fiend like a dope fiend, or someone that's come out of the life.
Yeah.
The minute I tell somebody who I am, they're like, "Oh, what now?" It just gives me a PhD immediately.
Well, and it's like, okay, just to bring it to football, because the 3 on this side can relate to that. It's like, okay, I've got a running back coach that not only never played running back, but he never played football, and he's over here telling me how to run routes or how to pass protect, but keep your elbows tight and punch them right in the chest. It's like, you know what, dude? Like, get out of here. Like, I get it. Like, by the book, you're giving the right answer, but like, it's totally different. And you unfortunately had to go through some very, 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 very hard times, but that is what prepared you to be able to serve so many more people and to impact so many more people. And that's what I love about your story. And we were so excited to get you on, was because you chose to take something that could have probably killed a lot of people going through what you did, but you turned that into now serving and, nearly 2 decades of just helping other people overcome the challenges so that they can escape like you did and then impact other people. And I love that.
Thank you. It's what makes my life make sense.
Yeah.
It's what I was meant to do. How every now and then you just know that you're directly in God's will.
Yes.
Every time I'm working with, it's a privilege to get to see someone just vulnerable, going into the Dallas County Jail, taking AA meetings, going into drug treatments, working with my girls that are coming in off the streets. It's a privilege to get to see people that broken down and actually speak to them.
Right.
It's a privilege.
Robbie, in your experience, if somebody's listening to this and they're whatever addiction it is, can you get through this alone? Can you beat this?
No.
Can you beat addiction alone?
No. Every single addict has an enabler.
Yeah.
Every single one, whether it be someone that has nothing but good hopes for us and, "Oh, this is going to work this time." But so that person has to stop. But no, we need support. Y'all, we are so much sicker than people understand. We have a disease that tells us we don't have it. We're spiritually bankrupt. We're filled with guilt and shame, and we're heavily addicted. So yeah, we need help. It takes a village.
Robbie, I want to kind of transition a little bit to the sex trafficking side, and new friends, new life. And, I want you to speak to the men out there. You had a trafficker that yes, maybe didn't grab your hand and walk you in the door, but he kept you there, and he kept you there through manipulation, through mind games, through incentives, through all those things. But talk to the men out there and the impact that we play on the sex trafficking industry. And then also, the responsibility that we need to take and the obligation that we as men need to really stand up and own.
I think men, and thank you for this, because it's huge. If there's no demand, there will be no reason for a supply.
Right.
And so, I think that men, I don't think they're really thinking about what they're doing when they're in the strip clubs. They've objectified women.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that they think that we're there by choice.
Yes. Right.
And I think they think that the girls on the street are there by choice. And I use this example all the time. If you had a choice, can't see my hands. If you had a choice, would you rather graduate from high school, graduate from college of your dreams, get employed at the biggest place you could ever imagine for yourself, have a wonderful career, get married, start a family? Would you rather have that? Or would you rather drop out of high school, be drug addicted, working in strip clubs as a minor, sticking a needle in your arm every day, and not knowing how to get out? Which one would you rather have? Well, duh.
Yeah.
Right.
So there was no choice.
Well, it's like we were talking about earlier. It's not as simple as just stop.
Exactly.
Quit doing
what is that? One of the things I do, I have such a heart for homeless people. Obviously, I've panhandled on the streets before. I know what it's like to have someone look at you and look away, and it's devastating. And so when I see people on the streets, I usually park my car and I go over and I ask their name. That's important to me, because the main thing I want them to know I see them. That's something that I don't have money to give everybody. I don't make a ton of money, but if I have it, I'll give it. If I'm drawn, if I'm led by God. But I always say, I just wanted you to know that I see you and that you matter. And I always tell them my name. These people probably haven't heard their name in days. And so there's a kindness there that I think that people are somehow lacking. So back to the men. So men, the man kindness part of, New Friends, New Life. First of all, Matt's a superhero to me.
He is a rock star.
I want to go to Haiti. Yep. Okay. Straight up. So, and them going into, I don't want to kick doors in. I don't want to, anyway.
Hey, you and me both.
Yeah. I don't care that people tell me, Robbie, you're like a chihuahua. You're this big. I don't care. Let me.
I'm gonna run under the bullets.
I'm gonna run under it because I ain't playing. So I'll break you in half, buddy. I'll break you in half. So, but the going into the junior highs and the high schools, and telling men, it's so funny, like, who decides what's cool? Who decides that? Because there's the cool people that are, checking the girls out and, woo, I'd like to tap that, look at that. And they objectify the women from a young age. They're looking at porn, hey, that's just what we do. Mm-hmm. And the next thing, because men don't just all of a sudden at the age of 35 decide to buy a human being and rape her. Right. It's a process. Right. And so if we can help the younger, decide, hey, you know what, we're going to decide that what's cool is not doing that. Mm-hmm. We're going to decide that what's cool is respecting girls and helping girls and treating them as if they were our daughter and all of that, and breaking the systemic cycle. So that is something that they're doing. But for the men, I think for men to just realize that we're not there by choice, we're not there by choice.
Yeah.
American men are the #1 producers in the world of child pornography, and they're also the #1 consumers. And it's like, come on,
No. Well, it's like you said earlier, the drug addiction is you can see drug addiction.
Yes.
Or somebody's addicted to drugs. Like, it's very visual. You can tell when somebody's addicted to drugs. When somebody's addicted to pornography, that's so easily hidden.
Oh gosh, yes.
But it's just as strong as a drug.
It's a brain disease. Do you know that? And I know a lot of porn addiction. They call it the motherlode of all addictions, because it's the oxytocin neurotransmitter that goes off when you look at sex. When you look at it, God gave it to us so we could procreate. But when you look at sex, it's the same neurotransmitter that is created when people have sex. It becomes to where that is what we become addicted to. People that are addicted to porn. It is a brain disease. It's not a moral problem. It's not, I mean, it might have started out that way, like, oh, come on, guy, don't, but it is very crippling, and it is all over. You can go into any church today, and I guarantee you 1 out of 3 men are addicted to porn.
Yep.
Or have a porn problem.
Yep. Agreed.
And the internet, while it's brought so many good things, it used to be back in the day, men, if they wanted to buy a human being, they had to get in their car and sleaze on down to the street and saddle up behind them like a snake, and and they had to actually buy a human being. Whereas now they can just click on their phone and click a mouse and, oh, hey, she's 13, cool, all right, and knock 30 minutes later. And so, also the traffickers, that panel, Tyler, that we were on at the men's breakfast.
Yep.
They pointed out that, like men growing up with dads that are traffickers, because it's a culture in a sense. So guys that have that, when they're younger, they can think, well, I could sell drugs, but if I get caught, I'll go to prison.
Right.
So I could sell guns, but God, if I get caught, I'm going to go to prison. I know, I'll sell girls, because if I get caught, they go to prison.
Exactly. And that's the mindset that I want you to get across to us today is, it's always been on the woman.
It's on us.
It's always been that way. So give us a little in-depth of
when I was in
that bondage.
When I was in and out of Lou Sterrett, like a revolving door, this was the scene. At the payphone, and I hate to call them prostitutes, women that were being prostituted were lined up trying to call their trafficker, their boo, to get them out of there. They had just been in there the week before. They had just been in there the month before. They know the guards. It's just a way of life for them. Where were the men?
Right.
Because the John was not in the tank next. So why? Even women, it was almost like that was just this unspoken, well, I guess I'm going to get charged with prostitution again. But the men were like, okay, man, don't do that again. It's mind-boggling because it is two people. And actually, we're the victims. We're the ones being bought.
Yep. Yes.
Absolutely.
And so I don't think men understand that. I don't think men understand that basically what they're doing, especially if the girl is 17 or younger, they're buying a human being to rape.
So true. Okay.
And that is what we need to think of it as. It is not consensual sex. It is rape.
I mean, okay, Centoya Brown, the girl that was trafficked at the age of 16, shot her John and was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Okay, she's out now. Oh, yeah. She was 16. How can you be charged with first-degree murder for killing your John?
Who was holding you hostage? If you were just kidnapped and we classified it as your kidnapper and you shot your kidnapper, hey, glad that you took care of it. Hey, we're going to, great job. Awesome. Right. Go ahead. But the sex trafficking, the ideology that you're a trafficker, it's not his fault. It's yours.
It's not. I'll give you another example. Domestic violence. If a stranger walks up to me and punches me in the face, the police come, they're going to jail. if my boyfriend punches me in the face, the police officers ask me if I want to press charges.
Yeah. Yes, it's true. That is true.
And so but people are starting to get woke. The Me Too, people are starting to understand a little bit better. Yeah. Really, they are. Laws are changing. It's slowly turning around.
But you know what? But it's up to us. It's up to you.
I was just going to say, we need help from the men.
Absolutely. And it's up to us and this show to spread that message as well. Because, before we talked to Matt Osborne, before I saw you a couple of years ago at the New Friends, New Life, at that breakfast benefit, I had no idea.
Really?
I looked at things through the same lens that most men look at today was, if it's a woman's out there and she's prostituting, it's because she just wants to do that. That's her deal. She wants to be in a strip club, and that's what she wants to do. I didn't look at it from the actuality of really what is going on.
So many of the girls that you see on the street, they're traffickers around the corner. Mm-hmm. And she's not allowed to come back until she's made her quota. And he's going to beat her ass if she doesn't make it. Absolutely. People don't see that.
Right. Yeah.
So I want to give you the opportunity. We want to be respectful of your time, but I want to give you the opportunity to talk to any of the girls out there that are struggling with addiction or are being trafficked, being held against their will, or coerced or manipulated against their will. I want you to speak just some hope into them, and that there's a way out. And so if there's by chance that they're listening right now, I want them to hear your voice.
You are not what you have been put through. That is not your value. Everybody has value. And y'all, if I can get out of it, anybody can. The guilt and the shame that we carry is crippling, but it doesn't belong to you. It doesn't belong to you. And there are resources for you to be able, it's funny, when you don't know what it's going to look like to get out of something, the horror that you're living in becomes normal, and it's what you know. And so you think that, well, that's all there is. There is life on the other end, and you are not going to be held down. Society is changing, and you're not going to be held down because of what has happened to you. You didn't cause this. It's happened to you. And if I can get out of it, really anybody can. You're not what happened to you. You have value.
Give them a couple quick resources.
Newfriendsnewlife.org, NEWFRIENDS, newfriendsnewlife.org. Call us. We have resources for you. There's housing for you at different organizations. You don't think that you have another way to make a living. And I'm telling you, there are all kinds of opportunities for women just like you, just like there were for me, just like there was for me when I had absolutely no hope of ever getting out of there. And there is. So newfriendsnewlife.org.
I love it. I love it. Ben is gonna hit you with a question. I've been looking forward to this question the whole show.
We ask this question to every guest, and I don't think I've anticipated an answer more than I am about to on this one. I can't wait to hear what you say. So you can go back to any point in your life and tell yourself one thing. Where do you go and what do you tell yourself?
Don't open that door. I wish that I could go back to my 13-year-old self and tell her that she had value, that she wasn't what she looked like. She was what was in here. I wish that I had been able to tell her that. I didn't know that. New Friends, New Life taught me, and it's one thing I try to pass on to my girls about our value. I would love to be able to go back and say, you have value and don't open that door.
Robbie, hey, God, this is so emotional. Listen, your life, you went through what you went through for a reason. And your strength just shows so much right now. And I can tell you right now, I mean, I know I didn't live your life, but I wouldn't have it any other way because you are such an inspiration to those that are listening. Again, I went through it with my daughter. I wish I would have known you back then instead of me thinking I could save the moment and be Superman.
People call me a Nazi sponsor because I ain't playing.
I ain't playing. But, you just brought to light so much good. And we're going to continue to support New Friends, New Life. And we'll be a part of you as well. If you ever need us for anything.
Thank you so much. Robbie. Darren, it was an honor to meet you. I'm serious. My family has been a Cowboy fan since the Cotton Bowl, okay? I had to sign an agreement with my dad when I learned how to write that I would bleed blue for the rest of my life. So, go Cowboys.
That's awesome.
We love you.
Thank you so much. I'm so honored to be here. Thank you.
Thank you so much.